On the night of June 16, 2026, while thousands of fans from across the world were boarding flights toward the United States with their World Cup tickets in hand, something was happening in airport terminals that no FIFA press release would ever fully explain. Players were being pulled aside, coaches were being questioned, and entire national delegations were sitting in detention rooms while the tournament they had trained 4 years to reach was kicking off without them. The story of FIFA's visa war and how it is destroying World Cup 2026 did not begin at a border crossing. It began the moment FIFA handed the world's biggest sporting event to a country that reserves the right to decide who gets to attend it. Let's talk about who built this tournament. Gianni Infantino, FIFA president since 2016, engineered the expansion to 48 teams with a single, stated promise that this World Cup would be the most inclusive in history. More nations, more continents, more stories, more football. That was the pitch. 48 teams from every corner of the planet, competing across 3 nations simultaneously with the United States as the anchor host. Infantino told the world this was football opening its doors. What he did not address was what would happen when the country holding the keys decided to lock some of those doors before the guests even arrived. The numbers tell you everything you need to know about the scale of what was promised. FIFA collected a record-breaking $11 billion in commercial revenue tied to this tournament cycle. Broadcast rights alone crossed figures that would have been unthinkable in 2014. Sponsorship packages were sold to global corporations, banking on the promise of a truly worldwide audience. Fans from Iran, from Iraq, from Senegal, from Uzbekistan, all sitting in American stadiums watching their national teams compete. That was the product FIFA sold. What none of the sponsors were told, and what none of the fans from certain countries were warned about clearly enough, was that the United States government is not a FIFA subcommittee. It answers to no football federation, and in the summer of 2026, it made that very clear. Here is what actually happened, and this is where it gets worse. Iran's technical delegation, coaches, analysts, staff members who had prepared for years found multiple visas rejected without detailed explanation from American authorities. The Iranian Football Federation did not receive vague administrative delays. They received hard refusals at a moment when their tournament preparation depended on having their full team operational. Iran's federation made clear in their official statement that this was not a paperwork issue. Their words described it as a political interference into sport, and they formally called on FIFA to intervene. FIFA's response was measured, diplomatic, and to anyone watching closely, completely inadequate. None of the official statements addressed the fact that FIFA had no enforceable mechanism to override a host government's immigration decisions. That is the structural flaw sitting at the center of this entire crisis. When FIFA awarded the 2026 World Cup to the United States, Canada, and Mexico in 2018, it signed host agreements that included guarantees of visa-free or facilitated access for all participating nations. Those agreements exist. The legal language exists. What did not exist, as it turns out, was any real enforcement power behind them. Because the moment U.S. authorities began denying entry to coaches and staff from specific nations, FIFA issued statements rather than sanctions. FIFA sent letters rather than ultimatums. FIFA asked politely while the tournament it had built was being shaped by forces entirely outside the football world. This is not a new pattern. That is what nobody wants to say. But the evidence has been building for years. When Russia hosted the 2018 World Cup, concerns were raised about how certain nations and journalists would be received. When Qatar hosted in 2022, thousands of supporters from specific communities were advised by their own governments not to travel. In both cases, FIFA's position was the same: trust the host, trust the process, trust the commercial framework. The pattern repeated itself every time a politically complex nation raised its hand to host, and every time FIFA collected its fees and moved forward. Now, in 2026, the same pattern has arrived wearing a different uniform. Iraq provides one of the clearest documented cases from this tournament. Ayman Hussein, one of Iraq's most prominent players, was held at an American airport for nearly 6 hours upon arrival. The questioning was described by those close to the situation as excessive, invasive, and deeply uncomfortable for a professional athlete who had done nothing except travel to compete in a sporting event. The story traveled across social media before any official body acknowledged it. None of the official statements addressed the human cost of what that experience does to a player mentally, physically, and emotionally in the days leading up to a World Cup match. Football demands that athletes arrive at tournaments prepared to perform at the highest level, not to navigate interrogation rooms while their teammates are already on the training pitch. Thomas Partey's case brought a different dimension into focus. The Ghanaian midfielder, who built his career at Atletico Madrid and Arsenal before this World Cup campaign, encountered visa complications that threatened his participation entirely. While Ghana's camp absorbed the distraction of not knowing whether one of their most experienced players would even be permitted to enter the country, the clock on their preparation kept running. The optics of a professional footballer with Partey's profile struggling to access a World Cup host nation sent a message that resonated far beyond Ghanaian football. It told every player from every nation outside the Western bracket that this tournament's promises of inclusion came with an asterisk, and none of the official statements addressed what the asterisk said. The Senegalese and Uzbek delegations reported similar experiences at American entry points. Players described being searched alongside trained dogs, held in secondary screening areas, and subjected to social media account reviews that would be considered extraordinary under any normal border circumstances. These are not anonymous travelers. These are athletes carrying FIFA-issued accreditation, traveling on officially approved tournament documentation, entering a country that signed a legal agreement promising them facilitated access. And this is where the story changes from a border control story into a FIFA accountability story. Compare what is happening now to what FIFA did in 2021 when the European Super League was announced. Within 48 hours, FIFA and UEFA released coordinated, aggressive statements threatening immediate sanctions and tournament bans for any club or player who participated. The speed and force of that institutional response was remarkable. Governing bodies mobilized, federations aligned, and the Super League collapsed within days because FIFA demonstrated it had real teeth when its commercial interests were directly threatened. The Super League challenged FIFA's revenue model. The visa crisis challenges something else: the dignity and basic participation rights of players from certain parts of the world, and the institutional response has been slower, quieter, and significantly less forceful. The contrast is not subtle. In 2022, FIFA fined national teams tens of thousands of euros for wearing rainbow armbands in a tournament where LGBTQ+ fans faced documented risks. The speed of that enforcement process was notable. Regulations were applied the moment commercial or political convenience demanded it. None of those processes were slow. The machine works when the machine wants to work. What the visa crisis of 2026 demonstrates is that the machine does not want to work the same way when the people being failed are players and staff from nations that lack the geopolitical leverage to force a different outcome. This is like parking the bus on your own future. FIFA spent decades arguing that football is universal, that the sport belongs to everyone, that the World Cup is the one event where humanity gathers without the divisions that define everything else. That argument was always the foundation of the sport's commercial appeal, not just its moral appeal, but its market appeal. Sponsors buy into the universal story. Broadcasters sell the universal story. Billions of viewers around the world watch the World Cup because the universal story makes it feel different from any other product. And now, in real time, that foundation is cracking. When a player from Iraq is held for 6 hours in an airport, the universal story takes damage. When Iran's coaching staff cannot enter the host country, the universal story takes damage. And when FIFA's response is a press release, the universal story starts to look like what it may always have been: a marketing strategy rather than a mission. What does this moment mean for the sport going forward? The 2030 World Cup is being planned across 6 nations on 3 continents. The 2034 edition is heading to Saudi Arabia. Every future host bid will now be evaluated by potential participant nations against what happened in 2026. And the question they will ask is not whether FIFA wants them there, it is whether the host government will actually let them in. If FIFA does not address the structural gap between what its host agreements promise and what it can actually enforce, it will enter every future tournament with the same vulnerability it currently has. The governing body has the power to require deposit-backed visa performance guarantees from host nations. It has the power to relocate matches or impose financial penalties when host commitments are not honored. It has never used those mechanisms against a powerful host nation. That is a choice, not a limitation. When you watch the next match of this World Cup, ask yourself whether the team on the pitch represents everyone who should have been there, or whether some of those teams arrived smaller, less prepared, and less supported than they deserved because the world's richest sporting organization prioritized its commercial timetable over the basic dignity of the athletes it asked to perform. That question does not go away after the final whistle. And if this video gave you something to think about, share it with one person who watches football. Not because of an algorithm, not because of a subscription count, but because the people being failed by this system deserve more than silence from the fans who actually understand the game. We built this channel to ask the questions that the official coverage won't touch, and every single view tells us to keep going. Subscribe if you haven't already. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us which case hit you hardest: Iran, Iraq, party, or the ones we still don't know about. And we will see you in the next video, where the story gets even bigger. A like on this video helps more than you think.